Hello, welcome to Shootout. The Asian Champions League is underway, as is the participation of some Australian clubs. The big match or the one that created a lot of curiosity was between Brisbane Roar and Tokyo FC. Brisbane Roar, probably as good a team as we've ever had in the A-League, being taught a bit of a lesson by the Japanese. It was a surprise to some. Craig Foster is with me. It was a bit of a surprise to me because if I thought if any Australian team was going to do well in Asia, it was going to be Brisbane. Now, it's not all over, of course, but I didn't expect them to be outplayed to this extent by the Japanese.
Yeah, well, I have to say I expected the Japanese team to play very well, play good football. Yep. All of the Japanese teams pretty much have, yeah. And don't forget, we've been given a bunch of hidings in this in this competition by Japanese teams. I mean, even going back to the final when Adelaide made it and got absolutely thumped. Central Coast Mariners, I remember in particular that they got absolutely destroyed at home. It was embarrassing. So, in fact, what the Roar did is a credit to them. Because, you know, whilst FC Tokyo came up from the second division, and I understand, still in pre-season, I think it shows to the fans and to Australia just where we sit right at the moment. I think is a really important lesson because we're so isolated, and this comes in our coaching aspect. This comes in all of the discussions we've had over many, many years. People tend to look at what we do here and think that it's, you know, that it's something. And they compare it to abroad when they haven't been there and don't really understand the difference. So
they compare it to Europe mostly, bypassing Asia. Yeah.
Yeah, and
they never compare it to Asia.
You know, and even with the A-League champions and so on, you know, people look at it and say, well, it's similar to Europe, and you know, they really, it's not. We've got a long way to go. But the fundamentals of what some of the teams, in particular the Roar, are doing is absolutely fantastic. It's precisely where we need to go. I'll tell you what I love about the Roar, that they took the right approach. Now, we go back quite a few years here, and I've been arguing for 10 years, that we need to go into these competitions and play football, not go there and close up, as Adelaide did, even to make that final, right? Because you don't learn anything. You only learn that you can defend and hit on the counter, right? So I totally support what Roar did. They went in, played exactly the same sort of football, and I give Ange Postecoglou tremendous credit for having the courage to do that and having the belief in what they're doing. Now, but it's a great lesson for us. It's their first step in the competition, and they will improve. But just in sense of the actual game, I think it showed everyone the difference in the level of technique. And you've made this comment to me afterwards. And I think a lot of fans said, look, the conditions were very, very wet, very sloppy, and yet the Japanese demonstrated very clearly. And they were predominantly Japanese players, right? That their technique was just absolutely beautiful. Their passing was superb, but in particular their first touch was almost invariably outstanding, on the move, away from players, into the right areas. Well,
that's 20 years of work in Japan, of course.
Right.
But tactically, what specifically happened? Show us where was it that they managed to break down the Brisbane Roar so well and not allow them to play?
Well, I'll tell you the difference between both. So they didn't allow them to play because they're far better organised than anyone else in the A-League. And without the ball, that includes the Roar. So what they've shown FC Tokyo is that the level of the Japanese game, with and without the ball, is above us. Organisation, pressure on the ball, extremely good, and Brisbane really struggled to play through them. But the difference in the two games, we've been talking about this with Brisbane for some time. I don't know if you remember World Game a little while ago, when Brisbane were in a bit of a bad period at that time. And I was trying to explain that they play in a very lateral sense, which is great. They play to a system and they're very rigid to that, and it's worked for them in the A-League. Whereas what tends to happen with the top European teams, and we saw with FC Tokyo, is it's less of a lateral game and much more of a vertical game. And if you remember against Central Coast Mariners, I explained how in the centre of midfield, the Roar had this great hole, which you don't see at the top level, because good teams are always, or at a higher level, always trying to play in through. So I'll explain to you why that is. Now, we're going to play a little bit of Raw Vision, and we're going to play it a little bit quicker. Just hold there, hold there. I know it's going very, very quickly, but the reason is because we just want to see that the Roar predominantly play in this direction. Now, that's fine because Partaloo comes back and he plays out here. His role is to receive the ball and take it out the other side. Now, why does that work so well in the A-League? Is because as the ball's played from one side all round to the other, the A-League teams aren't well organised enough to be able to adjust across the field. The Roar only need to do it once, twice, and invariably they'll get through here somewhere. Right? The Japanese or high level teams, you won't do that. You have to be able to come in here, in between the lines. Okay, so we're going to play the raw vision quite quickly, a little bit sped up, just so you can see the lateral motion of the play. Let's go. And I emphasise again, you know, it's been outstanding. You know, I couldn't support it more. It's been a wonderful evolution in the A-League, and it was a very, very necessary one. They've been miles ahead of anyone else that we've had here, and that is very, very important. I did say on the World Game that I think they're going to need to evolve, however, and that the A-League teams have to push them to do so. So that's just across and across. Now we're just going to hold here. We've now got FC Tokyo a bit of vision. Just hold here. What you're going to see is much more of this type of play. Okay, so rather than back here and out the other side, and then back here and out this side to try and penetrate laterally, a lot of this here, a lot of this here. Okay, a lot of from here into this with players pulling in this direction, this player pulling in here, always between the lines. Now, but just before we go, the reason is there's one line of the team, there's two lines of the team, there's three lines of the team. And what you see at the top level is always players positioned in here, in between, so that one pass from here is going to take out these players. Okay, and that's the key. To play vertically into here, these guys are out of the game. If he can get a turn and play to here, these guys are out of the game. Let's play on and you'll see what I'm talking about. So it's a big difference between there you go, vertical ball straight through the park. Two balls straight up through the middle of the park, and that's from good positional play. Watch again. Slightly lateral, but taking a whole midfield line out. Watch him come back inside now. Okay, now we go wide. Here we play again. Okay, now I'm just going to explain this one. Hold there. Hold there. Very good. Okay. Here's this player here. Now watch this player here getting in. All he does, and this is what you see in particular with teams like Barca and Madrid and so on, he just backs off into this area. These guys don't have to have a tremendous amount of movement. They also play at a nice languid speed. But as he brings it here to open up the angle, this player makes sure that he's behind this line. So the pass here takes all of this line out of the game. Okay, so you see straight from the keeper to here, from this guy to here, he can turn, and now we go forward. Play. He senses it, he knows it's there already. Look where he's taken up a position. Now he brings the ball back out and around, but every time they go forward into those areas, this is a lovely little bit of play. Okay? Two balls straight through the middle of the park. Exactly the same phenomenon. Three passes, slightly offside, and they're through. One, two, back, and we go. Once again, one, watch, second, bang. Okay? Vertical play through the centre takes good positional play. There you go. Straight up through the centre. Look, all of these players for Raw are out of the game. Once again, just bounce it off, straight up the centre, bounce it off again, straight up through, slightly offside. Four passes and they're gone. Watch. Straight up to the striker, off, watch this vertical pass. Bang, they were through. So continually, balls straight up here through the centre, and that's what you tend to see at a high level, is they try to penetrate centrally, and when they can't, and what it does is it condenses the defence centrally. Then they bounce it off and go wide. Okay, the more that you come around and around and around with teams that can adjust well, it just becomes ever more difficult, because in fact by the time they come laterally, they're very, very compact, and the only way you can break them is to go way over the top. And
the defence against it is what?
The defence against what? Sorry, defence against them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have to be compact now. Okay, you're going to have to put much more pressure onto the ball. You're going to have a much higher line, and particularly in those areas, you're going to have to compact so that they don't have the space in there. This is the perennial problem against Barca. See, people think that Barca use the width of the pitch all the time. In fact, if you look at the passing structure or the passing graph of Barca, in that central sort of rectangle of the field, that's where 90% of their play is. Because Messi as the false nine comes in, Xavi is here, Iniesta comes in here, and Busquets is here, and all they do is just play, play, play. And the more we play here, the more that it contracts their defence. Then they bounce out and Dani Alves goes, right? They don't come out to Dani Alves, then coming back and come all around the way. Every time the ball comes from right, back this way, they always try and play in. Back, in, no, back, in, no. And so actually going lateral to the other side is the last resort, not the first one. It's very interesting. Well, I find it interesting.
Yeah,
anyway.
it is interesting, and we look forward very much to see what happens in the second leg. It'll be fascinating, but good luck to the Raw. They,
listen, absolutely.
I tell you what, I think you told me after the game that, and I agree that many other clubs in the A-League would have been flogged.
I think they would have. I think the rest of them would have got all destroyed.
Yeah.
Absolutely destroyed. As I said before, many A-League clubs have got flogged against these Japanese teams, and it was only the Raw that would have survived in that game. I believe the others would have got. I think it would have been another 4 or 5-0.
Yeah.
So I say again, what the Raw is doing is miles above anyone else. It's been a brilliant step forward. But in order for us to learn and evolve, and we need to learn from these Japanese teams. See, we've got flogged by them many times, but what have we learned from them? What does anyone learn from them? As far as I can see, not a great deal. These are great learning moments for us, and to learn from them, we need to understand the differences in the play.
What we've learned is that we are very slow learners.
Exactly.
That's what we've learned.
We're awful learners.
Awful learners.
Yeah.
Thank you, Foz.
Okay.
See you again for another shootout next week. Thank you for joining us today.